I just want to take a really dark turn, if we could, is Epstein. We've done a lot on this. First, give us the overview. What was that? What is the truth of his life and death? And when are the rest of us going to get all the details on this?
We will never know the truth about what happened with Jeffrey Epstein because it was clearly an intelligence operation, right? It was clearly a form of blackmail and a form of keeping people confined to the narrative. So the Epstein documents, the way they came about was a friend of mine who's a lawyer said, I've never seen anything like this. There's this litigation going involving Jeffrey Epstein and everything is redacted. And this is filed in federal court. And as you know, you don't.
When was this?
2016-ish, 2017-ish. Yes. And he said, you won't believe this. You can't do that because if you want a confidential dispute resolution, you can do mediation or arbitration. If you're in public courts and litigation, your social security number is redacted, but why you're suing and what's alleged is not redacted.
Well, yeah, it's our justice system. Yeah.
Yeah. Go do arbitration if you want private,
right?
Confidential. And he goes, well, why don't we just file a motion to unseal? And I thought it'd be some like little side project and wouldn't cost that much money. Being naive because this was so unprecedented that it shouldn't cost a lot of money. It ended up costing $250,000 plus. With him giving a break on it, we thought it'd cost 10 or 20. And because if you're looking at it through the structure of the way the law is, you would say, there's no such thing as an easy win in law, but to the extent that there's an easy win, this is low hanging fruit. Let's just go ahead and get these files unredacted. It won't take that much time or money. Oh, the opposite. The judge ruled against us after sitting on the case for a long time on privacy grounds. There was again, that's not how the law works. The law isn't that you have the right to privacy in public litigation. You give up the right to privacy in public litigation. That shouldn't have happened. We think, oh God, this is more than we realized. So we go, I guess we got to appeal it. So then we file an appeal in the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. And meanwhile, the money is just, and I realized again, in hindsight, I was like, wow, you were naive. You thought there was just going to be some easy win, but I didn't really know what I was getting at, right? It's like pulling a tiger by the tail. You're on a little hike and you see something sticking out and you kind of grab it. And next thing you know, it's a Bengal tiger in your face. And you think, I didn't know that that's what I was grabbing at. And in my own naivety, I didn't realize what the whole Epstein situation was going to be a real.
He was still alive at this point.
He was still alive. He wasn't been arrested. So this is, as last night you said, I told a lot of stories you didn't believe. So this is another impossible.
No. I didn't say to believe it.
They were unbelievable.
You were telling me about your childhood, and I sometimes get self-pity, and I'm like, oh, my life was so hard. And I hear about yours. Like, are you serious? Did that really happen?
Right. So this is another unbelievable story. It's like a Forrest Gump thing. How did I get involved with Jeffrey Epstein? Just some random guy on the internet and Twitter. And how bizarre. So me and Mark Randazza was the lawyer. So Mark Randazza said, hey, why don't we just get these unsealed? You're always talking about pedophile stuff. This is such an easy win for you. And he goes, and the case is interesting to me, so I'll cut you a break on fees. We both thought going in that it was going to be something that you could get done for a reasonable amount of money in a reasonable amount of time. And it took years. So we filed the suit and the motion to unseal. And then the judge rules against us. We appeal to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals in New York. And then this is during the Trump administration, Epstein is still free, hasn't been arrested. A friend of mine, one of the good guys in the intelligence community, said, hey, just so you know, you shouldn't mention Epstein anymore. You're in a real problem. And they go, you got into something really that you didn't know what you were getting into. And I go, okay, what do you want to do? They go, just stand by. You're in court. That'll work its way through, but you need to not draw attention to this issue or yourself. And I said, okay, that's message received.
And this is someone in the...
Oh, this is credible. Yeah, this is a real...
In the intel world.
So yeah, this isn't some guy who reads me on Twitter worried about me after a divine vision. Yeah, this is a real thing. And so I didn't talk about it for about a year. And then what happened is the Miami Herald, Julie Brown, filed the same motion to unseal kind of that I had filed and piggybacked on me. And then that's what started to break open the Epstein thing. So then my guy in the intelligence world said, okay, you're green light now. They're not going to kill Julie Brown in the Miami Herald. Everybody's going to talk about it. So let the chips fall where they may. So then I re-entered the discourse on it because you can't kill everybody, kind of how they say, right?
Yeah.
You can kill one guy. You can have one guy get in a car crash, but you're not going to go after the Miami Herald or other people. Now, what is very sad to me about the Epstein story is if you look at the timeline and you look at the why Epstein became relevant again, and this isn't Julie Brown. Julie Brown, to her credit, had the right motives, but Jake Tapper and others didn't. A man by the name of Alexander Acosta was the Secretary of Labor of Donald Trump. So you now have an orange man bad angle because Alexander Acosta was the prosecuting attorney who oversaw the original plea agreement with Jeffrey Epstein, which could only be defined as a sweetheart plea deal, defying any kind of logic. And the media now had Trump bad because Acosta's Trump, Epstein Trump, the Trump Epstein angle. Right now, the media suddenly cared or pretended to care about the issue because they could use the Epstein issue to get after Trump. So then every media outlet wanted access to the Epstein files because they were hoping there was a Trump angle too. So then suddenly it became a big deal. So we go up before the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. Mark Mendoza and Jay Woolman argue the case. And by now the meter's like turning, man. I'm like stressing, dude.
And you're paying for this.
They gave me a break on fees, what they would normally charge. Anybody else, it would have been $1 million legal fee plus. But we had some of us pro bono, but I was still paying. Oh yeah, I was still sending big checks.
Just because you thought it was interesting.
Yeah. And I didn't know it was, if I'd have known how big it was going to be, I might have had second thoughts, but because they did me good on it. I don't want to make it seem like I'm complaining. This is the nature of the American legal system. Because that's why people go, oh, why don't you sue that person? They said something about you. It's like, I don't know. Why don't I write a check for $3.5 million to litigate a defamation case against somebody because they called me something on the internet? People don't understand that until they're in that world and they realize how much all of this stuff costs. So Miami Herald probably spent $2 million on fees. And so they argue the case. The Second Circuit made it abundantly clear that they were going to unseal the files because there was no way in the world under established law that the files should have been sealed in the first place. And oral argument happens. It's so clear that they're going to unseal it. I think oral argument happens on Friday, and I'm like, all right, this is good. 2 days later, Epstein gets arrested, flying back from France. The only reason he was arrested was because the files were going to be unsealed.
Yeah, because he was told he was not going to be arrested.
Right. The mop-up operation had worked, but for me, and more importantly, but for Julie Brown. Because I think if it had just been me, they could have just buried the case long enough. They could have issued an unpublished opinion that wouldn't have precedential value. Because the way it works is a trial court judge is more likely to make up the law against you than an appellate court, because an appellate court will have precedential value and apply in other cases. So the trial court could have just, they gave me a fake ruling because who cares? It's Mike Cernovich. And then the Second Circuit could have moved it to a shadow docket and ruled against me. But once Julie Brown entered the case, you can't ignore the Miami Herald, right? I think I'm a big deal, but compared to Miami Herald, I don't have any legitimacy at all, right? And then every other outlet got involved too. So then the regime realized, well, the Epstein stuff is coming out. We better look like we're doing something. And then, so Jeffrey Epstein was was arrested a couple of days after oral argument because they realized we have a mess. Now, what do we do? So then Epstein gets arrested. And then, do you want me to keep going?
I'm actually spellbound.
Yeah. So to channel Dr. Gene Scott, get on the telephones, get on the phones. So then they charged Epstein, but a little bit of like legal trivia. I went there for the press conference and I read the indictment, and the indictment was what you would charge someone if you wanted to create a media narrative that you were prosecuting them, but that under the law would be chicken shit stuff. The lowest thing that you could possibly charge him for, but you could say we're going after him. There's a reason they did it this way. They charged him for paying for massages in his New York apartment through, I think, the period of 2014 to 2016, somewhere in that timeline. Massages in his apartment. That's all they charged him for, the four corners of the indictment. So why did they only charge him for that? Well, there's a reason. He had a place in New Mexico. He had his island. He had his place in Paris. He had another place, I think, in West Palm Beach. And if they had charged him for trafficking, the FBI would have had to simultaneously raid every property under a Mann Act. The Mann Act makes it a crime to transport a woman.
State lines.
Yep. And international too. So he was flying back from Paris and he was flying women, models all over the world, models, not to diminish what he's doing, but that's was his story. He was flying underage girls and some of age all around the world. Well, what you would do with the SDNY, which as we know, the SDNY, they go after you, you got problems because they charge the most aggressive. They're too aggressive, in fact, in how they charge cases. What you would have charged it if you were concerned with being a prosecutor, you would have charged him under the Mann Act, and under the international version of the Mann Act, you would have simultaneously searched and seized every property, taken all the evidence. Instead, they arrested him, had a little press conference. It was over massages in New York property. They searched the New York property. What was happening in the island? We don't know. What happened in the island? We don't know. Because the FBI said, well, we can't search it because nothing that he was charged with concerned because of course the FBI is very concerned now with due process.
Yeah.
They're really, we don't want to go overstep our lawful authority, so we can't go raid that island. So they left all these properties unattended. And then that's when the mop-up operation commenced. And they got whatever compromising CDs and DVRs and other information. They got that from the intelligence community, got that from all the properties.
May I ask you to pause for 1 second? So this is happening in 2017? 18?
No, by the time it came to fruition, now we're in 1819.
Okay, right. So it would have been Bill Barr, the Republican Attorney General, his second time as Attorney General. He would have been aware of all this, correct? I'm not sure if Barr was in at the time. We'd have to double check it, but whoever was AG would absolutely have been aware of it. And I think it was Bill Barr because Bill Barr is the one who said that he watched footage of Epstein committing suicide, and he knows, but we can't watch the footage of Epstein committing suicide. Bill Barr can, but we can't. That's a little sus, right? Yeah.
Right.
Well, Bill Barr covered up the murder of Epstein. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.